What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. You know, we try to get different perspectives on the Federal Bureau of Prisons, different prisons. Today, we got a guy on that was a lieutenant in Atlanta when Atlanta was the real deal. Still the real deal at times. But anyway, James, tell the people who you are. Let's talk a little bit about you, and we'll get into some of the things that you've done and experienced while working at Atlanta Federal Penitentiary.
Yeah. My name's James. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I was stationed in Atlanta from 92 to 97 when like he said, when all the crap was going on. I've been retired since 2001. And we're just here to talk about hot Atlanta.
Atlanta was definitely a dangerous place, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. In 2 years, we had 7 inmates killed and 1 staff member. And they now prosecute inmates because of, with crimes, and that's because of all the violence we had in Atlanta. Janet Reno changed the law. She came down there to visit us after like our 5th murder, and she's like, "Yeah, we got to do something. This is too dangerous." And then she changed the law to where they prosecuted now, because they weren't prosecuting them before, so there was no deterrence.
You were working down there with your life on the line every day, right?
Oh, every day, every day.
You talked about you talked a little bit about the correctional officer that got murdered down there. You know, I think there was some allegations that he was maybe involved in bringing in contraband, and I know he was on the CERT team and all of that stuff. I mean, is that true, or what you heard?
There was allegations. I never really got the truth, but yeah, there was allegations that he was dirty. But a lot of staff down there were dirty. I mean, they say 30 to 40% were dirty down there.
Let me ask you this, right? How much were you making back then a year? You're putting your life on the line every day. Let the people know what it was worth.
I think I was making 50 grand a year. That's what my life was worth.
That was after being a lieutenant, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What was it like walking into Atlanta USP every day? I mean, were you worried? Were you like, "Hey, I'm just here," or I mean, what was it like for you?
I mean, I'll be honest, the first time I ever walked up to that building, it was intimidating as hell. I don't know if you ever seen a picture of it, but it was like walking up to a Capitol building. It just became routine after that, though. It just, it was just, you just going to work, and, I hate to say this. I mean, you being an ex-convict, but at times it was fun. I mean, that sounds demented, I know, but I mean, I was young and stupid and weighed 150 pounds less, and, fresh out of the military, and thought I was a badass. And, it just, the more dangerous it got, the more fun it got at times. And that's just, it sounds demented, but.
You say this, right? I understand what you're saying because, when you're in prison, sometimes it's the crazy things that happen each day that take you out of prison. The fights, the assaults, and for you guys running down the hallway to get to where you need to go, running out on the yard, keep it real, body slamming prisoners, maybe kicking a couple in the head if you had to, if you felt like you had to at the time. I mean, I guess that is kind of like exciting. You came from the military where you're battle ready, and this is just a new war, a new battlefield, kind of, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was a new form of combat. I saw a little bit of combat in the military, and this was just a new form of combat, but you didn't have any weapons. It was all hand-to-hand combat, and you had to bash some head once in a while. And the time I got down there, like I told you earlier, they were changing Atlanta from an administrative facility to a full-blown penitentiary again. And so we kept getting these busloads of other penitentiary inmates in, and the lieutenants would come off the bus and they would just laugh because they were giving us all their crap. And that's what penitentiaries did. I mean, you were at Big Sandy for a long time. There was a thing called diesel therapy. If an inmate was being in trouble, you can't do much to a penitentiary inmate, but to keep him on a bus and keep him moving, keep him away from his family, he doesn't get his mail, that was a form of punishment. And so these other penitentiaries would just dump their shit on us. And, we were getting the worst of the worst because the other penitentiaries couldn't deal with them.
You talked about hand-to-hand combat, kind of a different battlefield. You were actually stabbed at Atlanta, right?
Yeah, I got stabbed in the hand one time. Yeah, I was breaking up a fight, and the guy had a shank, and I caught the shank in my hand, and it hurt a little bit.
Who stabbed you? Was it a gang member, white, black, Hispanic?
I was Hispanic. Yeah,
Doing
we dealt with a lot of Cubans down there, and yeah,
down there when all the Cubans were down there after the big
yeah. After the riots, we still had a lot of Cubans. We got rid of them finally after I'd been there about 2 years. We did what I like to call the Great Cuban Roundup. They decided that we were going to get rid of all the Cubans and ship them to Leavenworth. So we geared up one night and went to the cells and grabbed them and drug them down, and they were gone.
You ever have to put your hands on anybody?
Oh, every day. Every day we're using force.
You ever see
I
cops
mean,
just you ever
you know,
see
it
the
was you. Go ahead.
ever see the cops just beat the shit out of people?
Yeah, I was involved in a few of them. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, we had a rule down there as lieutenants. We all came together and we said we called the lieutenant's office the lion den, and if you're coming to the lion den, you're going to get bit because we had to prove that we were badder than they were, or we would have lost.
You ever have
We
times
would we would have.
you ever have times where you're like, a dude comes to the lieutenant's office, they start getting mouthy, you guys close the door and bounce them off the wall? You ever see that happen?
Well, like I said, if you came to Lions Den, you got bit. So
You had no problem with that.
you know, like I said, we were outnumbered, and you had to keep control.
How do
So
you keep control with violence, with assaults? I mean,
I mean, I'm not saying we beat the crap out of everybody, but it's just if someone came in and if they were being confrontational, then we were confrontational back. That's what you had to do. I mean, you did time, you know how it is. Show any sign of weakness, you're going to get chewed up.
hey, I mean, I've heard lieutenants say never, let the truth stand in the way of a good write up, right? I've heard that
Yeah,
saying before.
yeah,
You want to smile. You talked about the murders in Atlanta, right? And some of the
yeah.
things that you've seen. And there's some young guys listening, and some dudes think the feds is sweet, and it's not really like that. But you've seen people murdered there. What's it like for you to witness somebody murdered or someone laying there bleeding, and in your mind like, damn, it's over. This dude's gonna die.
The first one I saw was it kind of bothered me, but after that, it just became another thing, which is again sad to say. I mean, the first murder we had down there was over $2. The guy would have died $2 for a gambling bet. He didn't pay it. He shanked him right in the chest, killed him. I mean, $2. That's what life was worth.
You know, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. They could be
Yeah,
gambling, dice game of
yeah,
spades goes wrong. For $2, you lose your life.
yeah, yep, $2. Because I helped with the investigation on that first one, and I was just like, $2, really? It's
Hispanics,
just,
blacks, whites.
I was a couple black guys. You know,
Who do you think was
we
the?
had a, go ahead.
I'm cutting you off. You go.
Oh, well, we had obviously different cell blocks, and each cell block was arranged into the severity of the inmate. And we had one cell block that was called D block, and that's where the worst of the worst were kept. And so that's where a lot of our violence was at in that block. Um, I had a couple snitches that would keep me informed. All lieutenants did, but you couldn't hear about everything. We had a riot in there one night. It was just totally insane.
The riot.
Um,
I'm curious.
the riot was over. They were trying to get to a guy in his cell, and two different varying factions were trying to. One faction was trying to get to the inmate. Another faction was trying to keep the inmates from the inmate, and it just turned into a full blown riot. I mean, when I ran into the cell house, it was 2 stories, and the top story You had railings, and inmates were literally jumping from one side to the other. I mean, it was insane. And I think the only reason I made it is because the last remaining member of the Texas Syndicate gang was in there, and he was standing next to me, and he had a cane, and he was just swinging this cane around. It was kind of funny. He's like, "I got your back, Lieutenant. I got your back, Lieutenant." I was like, "Okay, man, thanks." And the SORT team was at the back door getting ready to come in, but we managed to get control of it. So
You talked about every lieutenant has some people that come down and they offer up information. Do they just give up that information for free, or you guys look out with stamps, food? I mean, how's that work?
no, I never gave anything out. Um, to me, they would just give up the information. I know there was lieutenants that might give up cigarettes or something once in a while, but yeah, they just came to me because they trusted me.
So really, you had guys telling you stuff because what, they didn't want the violence, they wanted to be safe,
Yeah,
they wanted a better
correct.
environment.
Exactly. Yeah, they didn't want all the violence, and it was guys from D Block that were coming to me. In fact, one of my guys was a sparring partner of I'm gonna forget his name now. The guy that bit somebody's ear.
Was it Mike
Um,
Tyson?
yeah, he was a sparring partner of Tyson. Big dude, but he trusted me, so he'd come to me with information once in a while.
How did you feel? I mean, did you go to work to fight crime every day, or are you just going to work for, hey, I'm putting my 8 and get out of here?
No, no. As a lieutenant in the bureau, you can't be eight in the gate. You got to be fully into it. You want to make it a safer environment. I mean, lieutenants don't have the option of eight in the gate. There wasn't an 8 hour shift. It was 16 to 20 hours every day. And you had to be committed. You wanted to make it a safer place.
You talked about people getting murdered. You've seen a few murders in there. What was one of the
Yep.
most gruesome things that you like responded to or that you investigated?
Um, well, I've had a few. Um, One of them was, it was D Block again. We weren't running in there, and this inmate was tall. He was probably 6'5", and there was an inmate probably my height. I'm only 5'6", but he was holding a towel up to the back of his neck. And I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "His head's about to fall off." I was like, "Bullshit." So we took the towel off, and yeah, they had cut him. Someone had taken a nave or a razor into a toothbrush. I'm sure you're familiar with this. And they cut him along the back of his neck because it was a gambling debt again. And they missed his jugular by like an inch, but they cut him so deep that you could see the whitey muscle. And yeah, his head wasn't staying on by much. But what was surprising, he wasn't bleeding. But then we got him down to the hospital, and once he settled down, he started bleeding. But yeah, initially he wasn't bleeding. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't nothing.
I don't know if you worked there because I think it was in the 90s. The ABs, they ended up killing an Asian guy, had a bunch of money.
Yeah,
Were you
yeah,
down there then?
yeah, yeah. I remember that.
What was that? I mean, were you working that shift? Were you there that day?
I don't remember if I was there that day, but I do remember the incident.
Who
And
do
then
you,
we had another incident with the Indians. Somebody had gone into their sweat lodge and shanked somebody, and that's just a big no no. And so the Indians were gonna do a big deal, and I was involved in curtailing that. Me and a few other lieutenants, we sat down with them and we got things settled down. But yeah, that almost got ugly.
talk about that? How the staff will sometimes work with the inmates when there's a beef between the whites and the blacks, or the Hispanics and the whites, or Hispanics and the blacks, or Native Americans and the Mexicans. I mean, you guys, you politic it out sometimes. Like staff gets involved,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. You have to. I mean, to work in that environment, you got to be quick on your feet, mentally and physically, because you don't know when things are going to happen. There's days you could walk in and you could just feel the tension, and you knew something was going to kick off. But I mean, down there it was almost, it was daily anyways. But you had to be ready to respond no matter what. And kind of a funny story. the call over the radio was always staff needs assistance. Well, my wife at the time and I would we go to Walmart or shopping or whatever, and you were so conditioned to listen to that. If they'd say over the loudspeaker at a store, customer needs assistance, you were cued into that assistance word, and I would start going. She's like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "Oh, never mind."
You talked about the murders. I want to talk a little bit about that, right? Because I want it to resonate with some people, and I want to
Yeah,
ask you some questions. You said the first one kind of affected you, but after that, it was just kind of like, it's part of work. Did you ever feel personally connected to the job where it was like, damn, man, dude just lost his life. Damn, his mother has to bury him, or was it just a job?
I never really got. I mean, the only one that I was connected to like that was the officer that got killed. The inmates, I never really gave it a thought. It was just, let's get in there, let's investigate it, let's figure it out. Yeah, I never really got invested with it that way.
I mean,
Sounds cold, I know, but
was it kind of like you just didn't give a fuck? I mean, keep it real.
no, it's not that you didn't give a fuck. It's just you couldn't think that far into it, I guess. You know what I mean? And I wasn't a nice person back then. I was a full blown asshole. I'd gotten out of the military and seen some shit there and gotten into the prisons, and I was an ass. And so I didn't really take other people's feelings into account.
You were one of them lieutenants that nobody was getting anything from.
No, nothing. No breaks.
It was kind of like, man, fuck these guys. They're prisoners. I mean, you're a different
Yeah.
person now, but I mean, if that's how
Yeah.
you were, that's how you were.
Yeah. That's how I was. Everybody was a convict, and, all convicts were the same. And, I mean, and again, I don't mean to offend you, but I mean, in the 15 years I was in, I might have met one guy I thought was innocent.
Don't
You
worry
know?
about offending me, man. I mean, I'm guilty. I went to prison. I got a 40-year sentence at 24. I
Yeah.
committed the crimes that they said I committed. Do I think I
Yeah.
deserve 40 years? No. Do I think I deserve to go to prison? 100%, but not 40
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. And see, everybody I met in there was innocent. I never met a guilty guy. Nobody would ever say they were guilty.
I think that was kind of like the consensus back then, so to speak. I think things
Yeah.
have changed since then, but
Yeah. Maybe.
I mean, listen, as soon as I talked to you, I could kind of tell what kind of lieutenant you were. But I know you end up doing some other work, prison ministry thing, I think, but we'll talk about
Right.
that too in a
Yeah.
minute. But sometimes you got guys that come in there that are like, hey, these dudes are scumbags, they're convicts, they committed
Hmm.
crimes. You know what? I don't give a shit if someone stabs them. I don't care if someone kicks them in the head. I could care less. I
Yeah.
mean, and there's a lot of staff members that are like that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I wasn't, I mean, I cared. I didn't want to see people killed. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, it was violent, but was it necessary violence? No. Did I care that there was violence? Hell yeah, because my life was in danger. My officers' lives were in danger. The other inmates' lives were in danger. We were there to, cops on the street always say protect and serve. Well, that's what we were doing as well. We were the lieutenants were the cops of the prison. We did the investigations. We were there to make sure law and order was followed, and everybody's lives were in our hands.
Me say this, so because you said I don't know if you ever seen a picture. I've been in Atlanta a few times, right?
Yeah,
I have to say it's probably one of the most racist prisons I have
yeah,
ever been in.
oh
Um,
yeah,
let's just keep it real among white inmates. They're like,
yeah,
hey, bro, you go over there and you're white, your ass is in trouble from the staff.
yeah,
Fuck the
oh yeah,
prison.
yeah, oh
You were a
yeah. It
white.
was
You hold on,
they.
let me finish for a minute. You were a white
Yeah.
lieutenant. What was it like for you?
Initially it was rough. Um, and then once I got myself established and I earned some respect and they learned that they could trust me, it got better. But initially it was, yeah, I wasn't treated all that great.
Did your staff think you were an asshole, or did they think you had their back?
They thought I was an asshole, straight up asshole.
Staff did too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was, I've got a good friend of mine that we're still friends today that we served with. We served together in Atlanta and Milan. And we both went to Atlanta about the same time. And he went as a case manager, and I went as lieutenant. And he was approached by some guys, and I was approached by the same group of guys. They all pulled knives on us. They said, "You better get your shit together." We're like, "Okay."
Pulled knives on you, the inmates or the other staff?
Staff.
They pulled knives
And
out on you?
yeah, I just pushed my way through them, told them all to F off.
And
Yeah, me and my buddy, we still talk about that. We laugh about it. He's like,
so
"Man, you had balls." They were like, "What the hell is this little motherfucker pushing us away for?"
I know lieutenants just like you. Let's just say that. I've come
Yeah,
across a few. I know what kind of lieutenant you were just by talking to you. I can tell
yeah.
for the most part.
Hmm.
You know, working that job, do you feel like it messed you up mentally, emotionally, the shit that you've seen? I mean,
I mean, I've got some PTSD from it. There's no doubt. Everybody, I'm sure, does. You can't go through that every day and not have some PTSD. And this is one thing I want to say, and I've thought about this since your channel's watched. I was in the military, and guys in the military get PTSD, and I understand that from combat. And they can go to the VA and say, "Hey, I got PTSD," and they can get stuff for it. Law enforcement can't do that. There is nothing for that. They can go get help, but they can't get any kind of disability. They can't get any kind of, you know what I mean? I mean, I was in the military and I saw some combat, but I didn't have PTSD from that. I had PTSD from Atlanta. And there's nothing for it. And I don't know why, because there should be.
you know, when you got stabbed, I guess you probably weren't the intended victim, but you
No,
get stabbed in the hand or whatever. Did you go home that night and think like, damn, they could have hit me in the heart? You know, my wife could have been without a husband. Do you have kids?
I do, but no, I didn't give it any thought. I just shook it off.
Just a day at the job and you'll be back
Just,
tomorrow.
just a day in the job, going back tomorrow.
Let me ask you this question, right? Because you said, I mean, you pretty much admit you were an asshole lieutenant. I'm not calling
Yeah,
you that. You pretty much said that yourself. So
yeah,
the staff members, right? I always felt like the staff. I didn't care if it was the chaplain. I didn't care if it was the CO, the lieutenant, the kitchen worker. I didn't care who it was. I felt like the majority of them simply hated us because we were convicts, because we were prisoners. Do you think
yeah.
there's that kind of thing in there? Like, hey, look, man, we hate them dudes. They kind of teach you that shit from day one.
They don't teach it to you, but you kind of get that attitude because of the shit you deal with. I mean, if guys would lay down and do their time and not be stupid, there could be a mutual respect there. But if they're constantly being stupid, and I'm not saying every inmate was stupid, there was a lot of guys that would lay down and do their time. But there was a, 10, 15% that want to be assholes all the time.
When we talk about the assholes, right? What are we talking about? The dick jackers, the guys that kick the door. I mean, what are we talking about?
The guys that are just always looking for trouble. The guys that are always looking for fights. The guys that are always gambling and can't pay their debts, so someone's trying to shank them. It's just everybody. When I worked in prison, and even now I still hear it, they're like, "Well, we got to take weights out of the prisons because these guys are just getting all buff and all this." It's the dudes on the weight pile that weren't bothering anybody. They were the guys that were laying down doing their time. It's the little scrawny dudes that had something to prove that were always, trying to shank somebody. I mean, the guy that was the sparring partner, I never had to fight him. He laid down and did his time.
You ever have staff, you being the lieutenant, tell you, hey, look, I got a problem in the unit with this guy. I'd like to see him bounced off the wall. He's an asshole.
No, never had an actual request like that. No.
You ever have, I mean, before you were a lieutenant, you ever search a cell and just destroy it because the guy's an asshole?
No, I wasn't that kind of CO.
Did you have officers that did shit like that?
I've seen it.
Let me ask
Yeah.
you a better question. You ever have to come because you seem like an old school cat, and I've seen a lot of, these are the people that I respected, the guys that were always the same. You
Yeah.
ever have to come down and tell one of your officers, "Hey, look, don't do bullshit because you're creating an environment in here that could put me
Oh
and
yeah.
the rest of your officers in danger."
Yeah. All the time. Yeah. If an officer was being stupid or he wasn't being attentive, or because, like it or not, the the guys the guys that were convicts, not inmates, but the convicts, they wanted the officer to be out walking around. They didn't want him sitting in his desk reading a book, because they knew if the officer was out walking around, there's less likely some shit's going to break off.
What was the administration like that you worked for? Were they hard nosed on you guys?
They weren't hard nosed on us, but they were hard nosed. Yeah, our warden, I don't remember his name, but he was a hard ass, straight up old convict or straight up old penitentiary warden.
I know you end up leaving the bureau, right? And when you leave, I mean, maybe you had some issues, whatever, not from beating up prisoners. Maybe it was working there that affected you. But when you leave, did you miss the job?
I did. I still miss it today. Yeah, I miss the excitement. My job today is boring. I miss the excitement.
Were you sad when you left? Like, damn, man, I'll see you guys later, man. This is it.
No, because I didn't leave under good circumstances, so I was pretty much forced out.
So I mean, can you tell us why you were forced out?
I was an alcoholic. I was having a lot of different problems in my personal life, and it was getting the better of me. And I went off on another officer one time, and it just we got called in the warden's office, and I was basically told I got to go. I could either retire or I can get fired. And I was like, oh, I'll retire.
Put your hands on them?
No, no, I'm not that stupid.
So they pretty much tell you you either retire or get fired, and there's
Yeah,
no hand-on conflict.
yeah, yeah.
What did it feel like walking out of there that day?
Odd. It felt odd. That's all I can say.
And eventually, do you end up doing some prison ministry stuff?
Yeah. I wasn't a Christian when I was working in the prisons, but through the course of time, I mean, leaving to be totally transparent, when I left the bureau, I actually became homeless for a little while because I mean, I was just so screwed up in the head, nobody would hire me, and got my feet on the ground and became a Christian, and was in this church, and the pastor was talking about needing prison ministers, and I was like, nah, no, I ain't doing that. I used to make fun of those people, but it just kept on me, kept on me. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And it was pretty rewarding. It really was.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that you were able to go in there in a different.
Different, different light.
You walked in a different door. What was it like to walk back into a prison and do some prison ministry, being that you were a lieutenant and stuff like that?
It was odd at first. It was very odd. I was very uncomfortable. Because I didn't know what to do, because I had this preconceived notion of inmates from being a lieutenant and having that lieutenant attitude. And then I had to totally do a 180 and put on a different attitude. And it was awkward at first, but it worked out all right.
Well, hey, I mean, I'm glad that you were able to do it. Were you able to see people in a different light now?
Yeah, I am. There was a day I would never talk to somebody like you, ever.
Someone like me,
And
I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a Christian. I'm, I no longer live that life. I mean, I've said it publicly.
right, right.
I'm,
And I put that label on everybody that ever did time. And I was just like, all right, you did time. You're always going to be that way. You're never going to change your life. And after coming to Christ and seeing people in a different light, I now respect guys like you that get out and change their lives and make things better.
well, James, I definitely appreciate that, man. And I hope things are better in your life now. It seems like they
Oh
are.
yeah, oh definitely, yeah, a lot better.
Who would have ever thought
Yeah,
you'd go from being a lieutenant in the bureau to being homeless, right?
Well, they say everybody's about 1 month without a paycheck away from being homeless. So,
Ain't that the truth, especially nowadays? Listen, I
yeah,
definitely, I'm glad that you were able to come on and talk. I have to say,
yeah,
I've had a few staff members on here, right? I had another lieutenant that was on. He was pretty straightforward, and you're pretty straightforward. A lot of times you get cops on here and they're like, "No, we never beat up an inmate," or "No, we never tossed a cell. We don't do so." No way. I'm not going to talk bad about the bureau. Well, the bureau is full of shit a lot of times. Um,
yeah, it can be.
we just call it what it is. They paint this picture for the public, but even towards staff, I've seen the bureau turn their backs on staff members, and it's a it's a different animal. And if you've never been
Right.
there on either side, you can't understand it, right?
No, you can't. Cannot understand it. People always ask me, what was I like? And I'm like, I really can't explain it because you wouldn't understand. And they're like, well, have you ever seen a movie that's anything like it? I'm like, no, there's nothing like it. You have to experience to know what it's like. You can't watch a TV show and say, oh, that's what prison's about. That's not the way it is.
100%. I mean, there's this stereotype, and people think prison's one way, but when you walk into that federal penitentiary, it's not Camp Good Day Special Times. It's a
No,
dangerous and violent place, right?
yeah, yeah. Everybody thinks federal prisons, it's all, camps and golf courses, but no, these penitentiaries are some violent places.
Listen, before we get ready to go, is there anything you want to say?
Um, I want to shout out to my fellow gladiators. That we called Atlanta the Gladiator School because we were fighting all the time. And we've got a Facebook page called the Gladiator School. And I see some of them messaging me now because I told them I was going to be on here. But so shout out to all my fellow gladiators. And I don't know how many kids you get on this, but crime is not the answer to anything. I mean, it just isn't. Gangs are not the answer. You see all these smash and grab robberies going on right now. I mean, what is going through their heads? It's only going to end you up in prison. I mean, you're going to get caught no matter what you do. You're going to get caught eventually. I mean, I worked with a lot of mobsters that never thought they were going to get caught. A lot of high level drug dealers never thought they were going to get caught. But guess what? They were in prison. Crime ain't the answer.
Big drug dealers are now in prison calling their mom for $50 so they can get some soups.
Yeah, yeah. I need some commissary. Give me some money. Yeah,
It's a wild life, but listen, man, we might have to check out the Gladiator Facebook page. But I definitely appreciate you coming on, talking, sharing
yeah,
your experiences. And I'm glad that you were finally able to talk to a guy like me.
yeah,
It's all good. I wish you the best, man. I'm glad that you're living a good
yeah,
life, and you know what? I can understand, man, especially when you were forced out of a place that, you know what? It seemed like you cared about your job. But I'm going
I
to say
did.
this. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sometimes, whether it's prison, whether it's a convict, whether it's a cop, sometimes we miss things after they're gone. Sometimes we fuck things up. And once
Mhm.
they're gone, we're like, damn, I wish I didn't do that. Whether
Yeah,
it's making a bad decision and going to prison, making a decision at your job, or you're the lieutenant and you think, I got this, I'm the lieutenant. And they call you in the warden's office and say, hey, we're canning you, see you later. And then,
yeah.
you walk out of there and it sucks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Definitely sucks.
Well, again, I'm gonna tell people, man, if you like what we're doing, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Glad that we had this brother on to kind of give you a different perspective. Not always the convict and gang member perspective, but sometimes we need the cop perspective. So,
Yep.
James, again, thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah.
With respect,
Oh,
Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, we're out.